Hello, I am Michele and I work in the University of Pisa. Let me thank you for having me in this 2021 European Research Night, which is an initiative involving 30 countries and 300 cities. Let me also give some economic figures about the research in Europe.
In 2019, Europe dedicated around 2.1% of its gross domestic product. In this aspect, South Korea wins the World Championship, and its information and communication technologies are indeed well known globally. The two small businessmen here, Italy and Spain, as you can see they have very short forearms, they can barely reach their pockets. So locally there is a lot improved, since, at the end of the day, greater impact comes after better funding. So given this little disclaimer, now it's time to find out how sweat connects humanity and technology. Our first thought goes to the sticky liquid that annoys us when we feel hot or stressed. But why do we sweat? Sweating, or perspiration, is a quite efficient way to lower our body temperature. Within our body, we host any sort of biochemical reactions that generates heat. And they run constantly even when we sleep. Assume for a moment that this can be compared to a 100-watt old-fashioned light bulb. In 1 hour of steady generation, this amounts to 360 kilojoule of energy. Assume also that almost all this energy transforms into heat, and the contribution to light energy is so small that can be neglected. What would happen if we don't let in any heat escape from our body? Well, it would overheat, and sooner or later we will suffer a heat stroke, which needs to be urgently treated before our vital organs start to fail. In normal conditions, this does not happen thanks to a device built in our brain, called the hypothalamus. This acts as a thermostat, provoking shivers when the temperature falls below 37 or perspiration when the temperature is above. This marvelous device is part of the autonomic nervous system, and it regulates also many other involuntary physiological processes, as for example thirst, appetite and sleep cycles. So this little puddle of water on our skin will slowly evaporate, and doing so it will remove heat from our body. Notice that evaporation takes place below the water boiling temperature of 100 Celsius degree. Why so? Because at microscopic level we have these restless water molecules, floating around and weakly attract at each other due to the so-called hydrogen bond. This bond originates from electrostatic forces due to a non-homogeneous distribution of electrons around the molecule structure. In the water molecule, the central oxygen tends to concentrate electrons on itself, so showing a negative charge, while leaving the hydrogen appendices positively charged. Since opposite charges attracts each other, water molecules tends to stay together, forming a liquid instead of a gas. This bond is also weak enough that can be broken and rebuilt constantly to allow molecules to move around with a certain statistical distribution of speeds. However, at the air-water interface, chances are that the speed of a molecule is enough to break the hydrogen bond, letting it escape as a vapor molecule. So abandoning our sweaty body, it carries away also a certain amount of heat. That is basically how evaporative cooling works. Along with evaporation, other ways to exchange heat are possible. We experiment heat convection when a fresh breeze hits us. On the other hand, direct sunlight radiation warms us. And finally, we experiment heat conduction while drinking a fresh glass of water. Not to mention that both room temperature and humidity may obstacle or ease heat exchange. So to say that the little hypothalamus cannot rest even for a second in its duty to regulate our body temperature. But is sweat only water? In sweat you find minerals both in form of electrolytes and metal traces, but also larger molecules derived from our metabolic activity. All these substances keep our nerves, muscles, the heart, and the brain operative. Electrolytes help balance the acid-base level of the body, they move nutrients into cells, and they move wastes out. Among metals, iron is the culprit of the blood color to be red. The presence of arsenic, lead and mercury may indicate intoxication to some extent. Proteins are a large class of biomolecules and can be interpreted as the tools available to cells to do their job, which is frankly very complex. In this class you can find also antibodies, also present in sweat. So the presence and the quantity of such molecules may provide insights to human physiology and health. For these reasons they are called biomarkers. It has been demonstrated that dogs can be trained to recognize cancer from body odor. Why does sweat contains all these chemicals? Sweat is produced mainly by two kinds of glands, eccrine and apocrine glands. While the latter, together with sebaceous glands, contribute to our body odor. On the other hand, eccrine glands are distributed across nearly the entire body surface area, and responsible for the highest volume of sweat. From the illustration, sweat originates in the dermis layer, so the gland's secretory coil generates sweat by filtering the surrounding extracellular fluid, which is blood and interstitial fluid. That is why sweat contains many substances present in blood. So there is a considerable interest in the use of sweat for analysis as an alternative to blood, without the pain of piercing the skin. Moreover, if this liquid is already available on your skin, you can think about sampling it with some kind of wearable device, making it a point of measurement managed by the user itself, without the need to go to the doctor. Well, unfortunately this is still a far-fetched dream. Many technical difficulties hinder the use of sweat as a reliable alternative to blood, mainly because it is discontinuous, it is easily contaminated once it comes out of the pores. And some of the most interesting substances are very diluted, making it extremely difficult to be sensed with a small compact device to carry on. Apart from strictly medical use, we already have same devices in the market based on sweat sensing. On the left you see a wearable pH meter recently proposed by La Roche-Posay, which resemble a plaster. This device encodes the pH of a sweat in a change of color that can be read by the smartphone camera. The underlying idea is to offer to the user some moisturizer lotions for skin dryness. On the right you can see a very different application. It's about an anti-tamper device for those who have been convicted of crimes associated with alcoholism. This device continuously tracks the alcohol level in sweat, and wirelessly transmits the data to the authority servers. Very recently, researchers looking at sweat as a potential fuel to power small devices. This is still a research topic, so breakthroughs can be expected. Let me show you the concept behind this devices that are called biofuel cells. You have two strips of metal, they are called electrodes, in contact with sweat. Eventually these electrodes are enriched with enzymes and other mediator substances that facilitate a very specific chemical reaction at the surface, which involve the sum of the substances present in sweat. Let's say it is glucose, for example, which is reduced, meaning that it loses electrons, and in this process hydrogen ions are liberated. These ions are free to move in the liquid, and they are attracted to the other electrode in order to be combined with oxygen molecules and incoming electrons to form water. This happens only if electrons that departs from the first electrode can reach the other electrode externally, closing the circuit. Indeed, this electrical current can be used to power an electronic circuit interposed between the two electrodes. However, many tricks need to be employed in order for this process to happen spontaneously, as in a regular battery, and in any case, this process is triggered by the presence of the fuel, meaning that no sweat, no energy. One of the sweaty places of our body are our fingertips. Just this summer a research have been published about biofuel cell devices harvesting energy from fingertip sweat. Each of these devices can produce 100 microwatts of power while we sleep, 1 million of our initial 100-watt light bulb. Anyway, these are much of interest since they take advantage of the imperceptible sweat generated during sleep time. Let's wonder again, why do we sweat, but this time from a different point of view. Across the animal kingdom, very few animals adopted sweating as a primary cooling strategy. Dogs, for example, prefer to pant. As they move a large amount of air in and out their slobbering mouth, they boost up evaporation by forced convection. From the evolution standpoint, the human species adopted a standing position by walking on 2 feet, we lost our fur, and we developed millions of eccrine glands on our body. So perspiration became our primary cooling strategy. At that point we were able to walk for very long distances without stopping. And that converted us into the most tenacious hunters of the entire planet. Afterwards, in terms of evolutionary timescale, we invented agriculture, we invented a range of technologies, passing through 3 industrial revolutions, and here we are in the information era. Together with many other personal data, we are at the point to push to the cloud data extracted from our sweat, that is to say, data about our intimate biological processes. More importantly, such kind of data are very peculiar, because they carry information that we may be not able to understand ourselves. So what is information? Information arises when data meet their interpretation, that is to say, when a proper contextualization is given in order to model and predict some phenomena. Things gets complicated when who generates data is not the same person who interprets them. With current technologies, this interpreter can be a physical person, but more often it will be a profiling algorithm that can be trained, or even self-trained to make better and better predictions. On one hand, the recognition of patterns from raw numbers is not equivalent to a deep understanding of those data. Nevertheless, if those data can be fitted into a model, known to the interpreter but unknown to the data generator, this model will constitute the basis of the interpreter's next decision. This decision may affect directly or indirectly the unaware data generator. Let me give you some examples. If an insurance agency will have access to sweat biomarkers of a potential client, wouldn't it apply a personalized health coverage price? Would an employer refrain to use that kind of information to sort job candidates? Or would an institution use the MAB personam to restrict freedoms or apply penalties?
Okay, so I finally arrived to the end of this talk. I really hope I opened the door of your curiosity. Thank you very much for your attention.